Welcome to the channel Informative History. Entertainment hidden from prying eyes in the harem of the Chinese emperor. People know much less about the concubines in the harem of the Chinese emperor than they do about the Eastern sultans and harems of the Oriental padishahs. One could say that in the East, concubines had an easier life in some ways and, on the contrary, a harder one in others. According to the laws of the heavenly dynasty, the emperor could only have 4 concubines, the number of sides of the world. He himself, the 5th, embodied the unity of all elements and meanings in the system. This does not mean, however, that there are only 4 women in the palace. On the contrary, in addition to wives, there are concubines, who are divided into several categories, as well as dancers, singing girls, and maids. If we look only at rank, each of the emperor's wives had 12 maids. The eldest concubine had 8, the middle concubine 6, and the lowest-ranked concubine had only 2. According to some estimates, there could have been as many as 40,000 women and girls in all in the so-called Forbidden City, where the concubines lived. With so many members of the weaker sex, the emperor himself obviously needed to protect himself from too much influence, and so he established rather strict rules of communication. Therefore, the emperor could only have intercourse with his official wives once a month, and with the most high-ranking concubines up to 5 times. This rather strange rule is due to the fact that, according to Chinese beliefs, the empress, the main wife, has the highest and most pronounced femininity, so she could conceive an heir even once. Unlike the official wife, the femininity of the concubine was less obvious and required more attempts. Hence the paradox that concubines had more access to the emperor than ordinary wives. With so many women seeking to be near the emperor, intrigue and jealousy in the Forbidden City often reached such a level that even the founding emperor of the Ming dynasty, Zhu Yuanzhang, was forced to make a rule not to allow any concubines to rule in the main court. They had an order when they could go to the sovereign's bedroom. Intrigue aside, the process of meeting the emperor was more canonical than the instruction to fire the Wehrmacht's unique Dora artillery. The whole process was led by eunuchs who had more power in the harem than the most beloved concubine. So, before dark, a eunuch found a suitable concubine, or wife, and handed her a tablet with the emblem of the emperor's wish. After that, the chosen one was sprinkled with incense and then waited for permission to meet the ruler. The reason for the lack of clothing was for security reasons, so that concubines could not carry knives or other weapons in the folds of their clothes. After the girl was ready, the eunuch envoys entered the room. They wrapped the chosen one in a blanket of a heron's feather and carried her to the bedroom to meet the emperor. In the bedroom, the eunuch would remove the concubine's cloak and leave. Here are 2 traditions of the act itself. The first, coming from the Ming dynasty, was always the emperor's mother, or a senior court lady, or someone else who was there to the end, advising the concubine if necessary how best to proceed or how to give more pleasure to the emperor. Moreover, everything that went on was recorded by one responsible eunuch, who wrote down the lovemaking procedures in red ink. Later, during the Qing dynasty, the eunuchs simply waited outside the door. It should be noted here that the highest rank of eunuchs, the so-called main affairs room, was concerned only with ensuring an unobstructed and quality process. In addition, the rules of the Qing dynasty stipulated that the emperor could not keep concubines until morning, when, in the opinion of the head of the chief affairs room, he loudly proclaimed, "It's time!" And, if necessary, he could repeat this sentence several times until the bedroom door opened. After the emperor expressed his joy, he was asked several questions. The first is, to keep or not to keep? This question is related to the emperor's favor for his concubine. With the consent of the emperor, a corresponding entry was made in a special book, when and who was marked with favor. If the emperor gave a negative answer, there was no record. Unlike concubines, the emperor could visit his wife himself, but in any case the visit had to be recorded by the eunuch, and the eunuch would then eagerly await the emperor's statement. If the Son of Heaven said, "Go away," no record was made. This means that there was no process. And in this case, a similar record was made. On a certain day, in a certain month, in a certain year, at a certain time, the emperor made the empress happy. Sometimes the emperor said nothing, and the eunuch knelt down and asked the emperor for advice on what to do. In their spare time, concubines live a carefree life, learning various crafts, dancing, and simply living a life of luxury. In addition, all residents of the Forbidden City received important monetary benefits. However, this did not last long. Senior concubines and many junior concubines were engaged in household chores, laundry, cleaning, cooking in the kitchen, preparing various aromatic potions, dyeing fabrics, and sewing clothes. Concubines could be expelled from the palace for a variety of reasons: loss of beauty, childlessness, violation of rules. Some elderly concubines spent their lives quietly in the hidden places of the Forbidden City, but not all had such an opportunity. If this girl had not been one of those who could at least occasionally see the emperor, her fate might have been simply unenviable. This also included those who fell into the emperor's disfavor. These unfortunates were completely at the mercy of the eunuchs. Many of them tortured abandoned concubines as best they could. Beggarly beauties were often thrown out of the palace, and they became objects of ridicule outside the palace. In ancient China, even peasants and artisans had concubines. For example, a bricklayer or blacksmith, going to work in another province, could unofficially take a temporary wife, who would organize his simple life and make him happy in bed instead of his legal wife who remained at home. Although even poor men could keep a harem, this kind of relationship was strictly regulated in China. Even if a Chinese man could keep 100 women, he had to limit himself to the number he was entitled to. All residents of the country, except for the godlike emperor, could have only one legitimate wife. But the number of concubines depended on one's rank and circumstances. Thank you for the likes and comments. Subscribe to the Informative History channel. See you all again.